gentleman's prayer. Could I have your attention, gentlemen, rest your hats, bow your head. Our Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this assembly today. We pray and give you all the honor and glory that you so rightly deserve. We also thank you for the accomplishments that these men have made to make our legacy great. We pray that those that have traveled near and far, we thank you for those that have made it here safely without any hurt, harm, or danger falling upon them. We ask that you would go with this program. Bless us all collectively. This is another blessing we pray. Amen. We will now have the moderator, our grand historian, and former mayor of Prairie View, Mr. Frank Jackson.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Giving all praises and honor to God. It is truly an honor to have everyone here today on this great occasion. I want to give special respect and thanks to our Grandmaster Curtis. Can you stand and be recognized? And I want to recognize all Grand Lodge officers and heads of houses. Sister Jackie Livingston, head of Harrington Jericho. And I want to recognize elected officials, so if y'all would stand and state your name and your position so we won't overlook anybody, so please.
Somebody say something.
Sorry. My name is, good evening. I'm Nicole Collier. I serve in the Texas Legislature, House District 95. Good evening, everyone. My name is Devin Allen. I'm honored to serve on the Tarrant County Commissioners Court representing Southeast Tarrant County.
I'm Constable Michael Campbell. I serve for Tarrant County Constable Precinct 8. Thank you.
I'm Sheena Bibbins. I represent City Council District 5. My district is bigger than the city of Euless. It is huge, and we love Moser Valley, which is a connection for Benny Tucker. So that's who I am.
Hi, I'm Leah King, and I'm a director on the board for Tarrant Regional Water District.
Kelly Allen Gray, Wilbert City Council, and I get to share the Grand Lodge with you.
Did we miss anybody?
We got a former elected official.
We got a former elected official still represented. Please stand up, sir.
Come on, Judge.
Done a lot.
Judge. I'm Glenn Lewis. I'll introduce myself to everybody else, because I've known him since I was about 17 years old. I'm Glenn Lewis.
All right.
We got the extraordinaire right here.
All right. Introduce it.
It's a retired judge of Tarrant County District Court and brother, L. Clifford Davis.
But again, we want to thank everyone for coming out. I'm going to serve as your moderator this evening. But let me give you a little background on how we got here. Because we think it's important to share this exhibit, not only with the community, but with all those that are constituents of yours in this community, Dallas, Fort Worth, and really Texas. You see, after the Civil War, the great question became, what do we now do with these newly freed people? The northern businessmen and their intellectuals and the southern aristocracy and their intellectuals got together on several occasions to decide what we're going to do with the Negro. But what they didn't take into full account was that we had ideas of our own. There was born in Waller County, down on the Mount Zion Sunnyside plantation, a young man named Norris Wright Cuney. Norris Wright Cuney's father was a white slave master named Philip Cuney. He was married twice, but he had a slave mistress named Adeline Stewart. She gave birth to several babies for old man Cuney. She had several girls and several boys. She had such influence over him that she convinced him to send the girls to France to school and send the boys to the Wild Street School for Negroes in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Well, that Wild Street School for Negroes was run by the Vachon family. Now, if you Google the Vachons, you'll see what kind of people they were. First of all, they were Prince Hall Masons, but they're the ones that took in Frederick Douglass and Martin Delany, and they operated that North Star Messenger out of the Vachon's barbershop, which was a depot on the Underground Railroad. The Vachon's son went to Oberlin College and was one of the first African-American faculty members at Howard University. You're going to see them all throughout history. Well, young Norris Wright was raised over there as a young man and taught and educated by the Vachons. He came back into Texas after the Civil War. He was a mulatto and he was educated. He encountered this brother that we have a picture up here named William D. Matthews. Matthews came out of Maryland. He made it over to Leavenworth, Kansas, and he was such a bad brother that when the slave masters would look for runaway slaves over in Leavenworth, Kansas, WD would form a posse and go after the slave masters. And so when the Confederates were getting ready to invade Kansas, the provisional governor had W.D. Matthews to form with ex-slaves a militia and other officers that could be colored troops. They had a colored cavalry, a colored battery. But long story short, W.D. Matthews fought during the Civil War, came into Texas as a U.S. Marshal, territorial marshal, but he was also the Grand Master of the most worshipful King Solomon Grand Lodge of Kansas. He made CUNY his deputy Grand Master. And eventually when they organized here in Texas, Norris Wright CUNY became our first Grand Master. But they went to work after that. Those men helped organize African Americans to run for public office. During that Reconstruction era, we had 2 African American state senators, like we only got 2 now. We got Royce up here in Dallas and Boris down in Houston. Back then they came out of the Brazos River Valley down by Waller County and Fort Bend County. We had Walter Burton and Matthew Gaines from over in Washington County. These boys will be found on the rolls of this Grand Lodge. CUNY was our first Grand Master, so most of those Masons were elected officials. They went to Austin and in 1876 helped pass legislation to create not only Texas A&M University, but Purdue A&M University. So we owe a debt of gratitude to these guys. But they did something that scared the heck out of the former slave owners and the northern capitalists. CUNY and the rest of them were all Republicans. So we were Republicans then. They eventually betrayed CUNY, and that's when he went started hanging out with the Democrats, because they were his blood enemies. But as the head of the Republican Party, CUNY rose to power to head the Republican Party in Texas. His political payoff was that he got control of the docks in Galveston. So all of the cotton and sugar coming out of that valley went through Galveston. That's how they made their money. Now CUNY was in charge. His grand secretary was William Bill Gooseneck McDonald, which operated the Fraternal Bank and Trust up here in Fort Worth. So that scared them to how organized African Americans were after the war. They quit. They were saying, Lord, we just turned these Negroes loose. And look at them. They were able to loan folks money so they could buy land. Most black families said, well, Papa and them had 200 acres. We had land. We opened up beer joints, barbershops, beauty shops, funeral homes. Those institutions were the bedrock of our communities. And that scared those former slave masters, because they knew that if ever we recovered our historical memory, if we ever came to ourselves and realized who we were as a people, we would no longer tolerate second-class citizenship, and certainly wasn't going to put up with that stuff they were doing to us in slavery. So this exhibit talks about that legacy. It talks about how we got started here in Texas and changing the whole dynamic of the state of Texas. And our present-day elected officials and state representatives and senators, y'all have carried the ball for that. And I want to recognize State Representative Helen Giddings, who just came in. So join me. Because the folks down there in Austin especially operate under a very strong influence of that old guard, I should say. They still in power, but they respect those that come at them with respect and with authority from their people. And so I want to thank you and Representative Collier. Representative Sherman's in the house. Let me recognize him. Because when schools like Prairie View and other public institutions need help, these are the people we go to. They're carrying the weight of all of us here in Texas on their shoulders. But this is where it started. It started with William D. Matthews, W.D. Matthews. It started with CUNY and those guys. So we're telling our story, and hopefully we are telling everybody's story in the meantime. This traveling exhibit about the Reconstruction era legislators was long overdue. Larry Thomas and then former Speaker of the House was able to pull this off together, pull this whole program together. And back in 2010, I think it was, Grandmaster, we went to the State Cemetery and unveiled a monument to these Reconstruction era legislators so that people could be reminded of what they did for Texas and did for the people in Texas. So without further ado, we're going to go and get started. They told me not to talk about because I was getting ready to start hooping up here. We've had our invocation. Now we have our welcome by Brother Cole, our grand legal advisor.
Good evening. My name is Willie Coleman, and it's my pleasure to meet and greet you here today. I am a Baptist, and I am a Baptist deacon. And after Frank Jackson's talks, I think we just ought to take up an offering. I'm sorry, open up the doors of the church first, and then take up an offering. I have lost count of the times that I have heard Frank Jackson speak with passion about the history of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Texas. And it never gets dull. And every time I learn something new about who we are. We thoroughly appreciate him. We are excited and happy to have you all here as our guests today. Somebody says, so why did you bring the exhibit to Fort Worth? Why did you invite us here for this event today? There are a couple of reasons why we did so. One reason is that we are one of the best kept secrets in Texas. The Wilbert M. Curtis Texas Prince Hall Library Museum is one of the best secrets in Texas. If you want to know about the history of African Americans in Texas, within these walls is an abundance of information that can provide you information about who we are and what we do. We start with our existence in 1875 as a Grand Lodge here in the state of Texas. And it's amazing that years later, a few years later, that you had African Americans being elected and working in the legislature of Texas. In 2010, when the Texas legislature decided to recognize these gentlemen, they invited the Prince Hall Grand Lodge to come to Austin and to participate in the unveiling ceremony. And in the foyer of this building, you will see pictures of that day in 2010 when we actually unveiled, regaled, and presented the exhibit for all of Texas to see. We wanted you to know where we are, and we wanted you to know who we are. We are Prince Hall Mason, and we're excited to have the 21st Grand Master of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Texas and Jurisdiction Free and Accepted Masons of Texas. That's a long name. And Wilbert M. Curtis present with us today. And we want you to be our messengers. as you see us here today, if you see what it is that we have done, this library museum was started on June 25th, 2011. And we've come a long way in a short period of time, and we have more to do, but we want to invite Fort Worth to come here. We want Fort Worth to send its children to this place so that they can see the history of African American in Texas. It's here for their benefit, and the motto of the Library Museum is that we're telling our own story, because nobody else has told our story, and nobody can tell our story better than we can tell it ourselves. We're glad that you're here today. You have made this a success. When I drove up here from Houston today, I wondered, is anybody going to show up? Is anybody going to show up? Well, all of the potentates have shown up today, and we're excited to have you here today. Thank you. God bless you all.
Next, I have the pleasure and the honor to introduce former Texas Representative Glenn Lewis to introduce our special guest this evening. But I need to tell this about Glenn. When he was a freshman there at Prairie View in the Naval ROTC program, he was in my company. So that's how we first met. But then as fate would have it, when I started coming to Austin working for Prairie View as a governmental relations officer, Glenn gave me a place to hang my hat. So I know I could go by his office, and we did some good things. We were able to create, with the rest of the members of the caucus, the Texas Institute for the Study and Prevention of Juvenile Crime and Delinquency. And that's no small feat. Prairie View now gets 50 cents off each felony case in Texas to fund it. We started off with a quarter. That generated about $1.6 million. We now get 50 cents, so we can study why our kids are going in that prison pipeline and try to stop it. So we're on that thanks to you. But we went a step further. With those funds, we were able to create our first PhD program in juvenile justice. It took us 125 years to get our first doctoral program, and it was because of folks like Representative Glenn Lewis opened that door so we could have access to funds like that. So I want to thank him for that publicly, and all the rest of the members of the House and the Senate, Voice West and the rest of them that came to our aid. But it was Glenn that sat there with Dr. Hines, and we worked through this. And I know he's going to introduce Representative Giddens, but I need to tell this on her. And I'm trying not to get emotional, because this lady has done so much for Texas. And I can only speak just for Prairie View and Texas Southern, so I'm going to say this. We were under the knife for some severe budget cuts. One of the universities that I was responsible for helping, Texas A&M Texarkana, was going to suffer a 60% cut in their state budget. Prairie View was getting ready to get a cut in its special items. Representative Giddens took the initiative to do stuff before all of this got started, to move some very essential funding that Prairie View and Texas Southern get as part of an agreement, an Office of Civil Rights agreement that said that the state of Texas would try to remove all vestiges of what they call de jure segregation from both Texas Southern and Prairie View. They allocated an additional $25 million a year that was only supposed to be for 6 years. That was back in 2000 or something. So y'all know we're extremely happy to have someone like that in our corner, and the rest of the members of the House and the Senate that have been fighting for those universities over these years. So thank you, Representative Giddens, and I turn it over to former Representative Glenn Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Jackson, Frank Jackson. And I wanted to take a little bit of the privilege and welcome you back to Fort Worth again. Frank's a historian, and he has spent a number of years trying to preserve the history of our people in this state. and he's done a great work. And as he said, he and I was a 17-year-old freshman at Prairie View A&M University when I met Frank. He was a senior. I was in the Naval ROTC, and he was our commanding officer. That's how far back we go. But I'm here to introduce another friend of mine, Representative Helen Giddings. And I can tell you that of all these people in history, both the political figures and the business trailblazers, Helen Giddings will take her place among all of those because she belongs there. Helen Giddings is president of Multiplex Incorporated, which is a specialty concessions company. Now, Helen, when I asked for your bio, I got this long one, which is kind of like mine. I always tell people, don't read the whole thing, else the introduction would be.
Just say your friend Helen.
Yeah, well, I would say a little more than that. But if I read the whole thing, my introduction will probably be longer than her remarks.
Amen.
And that should never happen. Helen Giddings is a very successful businesswoman. Before going into business for herself, she also worked for the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce and was very successful there and set that organization on the track to be the great organization that they are now. She was a trailblazer there. But politically, Helen served 26 years in the Texas House of Representatives, and I had the opportunity to share 10 of those 26 years with her, and we became very close friends. I watched Helen as she worked. She was there before I got there, and she was there after I left, and I learned from Helen. And Helen is one of those people who managed to maneuver and get things done for our community, no matter who was in charge. She was effective when the Democrats were in charge, and she continued to be effective when the Republicans were in charge. And that's the key for us, because it's a struggle for us no matter who it is. Everything we get is a struggle, and Helen is a master of the House. Helen also continued, after I left, as some of you know, I served on the Board of Regents of Texas Southern University for 12 years. And I just rolled off this past April. In 11 of those 12 years, I was the chairman of that board. And let me tell you, when it came time for us to go to Austin and get our money and get what we need to educate our children, and Helen Giddings was always the go-to person. And let me tell you something you may not know. According to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, Texas Southern University awards more college degrees to African Americans than any university in the state of Texas. Followed very closely, a close second, by Prairie View A&M University. Think about that for a moment. Some of those universities, like the University of Texas and Texas A&M, are as much as 6 times larger than Prairie View and Texas Southern. But yet, those two universities award more college degrees to African Americans than any of them do. That's extremely important in this state, and another important person in this state is Representative Helen Giddings, who I am proud to call my friend.
More than generous introduction, and we have worked closely over the years in the Texas Legislature, and when Representative Lewis went on to Texas Southern on the Board of Regents. That brings up so many memories. Glenn, you have probably forgotten, and maybe you want to forget, when the Democrats went to Oklahoma, and you and I were hiding out. Glenn wouldn't even tell me where he was. I was in the hotel, and I told Glenn where I was, but he was hiding out, wouldn't tell me where he was. Of course, I was, I guess, naive enough that when Tom Craddock got on TV and said, we found the Democrats there at Denny's, and they're having dinner, and then we're going to bring them back. And the authorities were there, of course, to bring him back, but they had forgotten that the governor of Oklahoma was a Democrat, and he wouldn't sign the extradition, so they couldn't take it back. Well, I didn't hear that part. I just heard Tom say that they were on the way back. So I said, called Glenn, and I said, Glenn, I'm going on now to my apartment, and I'm gonna, get dressed and get ready and, be there when they get back. And Glenn said, I'm gonna stay exactly where I am. He was smart. I got arrested. Of all of the people, I was the only one who got arrested because I thought everything was over, and I came out from undercover, and they got me. But I'm delighted to have an opportunity to be here with you this evening. I'm sorry that I'm a little bit late getting here because I would have liked to have heard everything Frank had to say, because I love history, and wow, was he really into it. And I learned a lot just from the few minutes that I heard you talking. But I also learned something else coming over to Fort Worth tonight. Never get in a car and take your attention off the road with a man who says, I know Fort Worth like I know the back of my hand. Because you just may get lost like we did. I probably could have gotten here by myself. But I'm delighted that you're here this evening talking about history. And it's like Frank was saying, our history is so very, very critical. And it's just important that we know our history so that we know who we are and from whence we've come. And so much black history, as you well know, has strayed, it's been lost, and some of it has absolutely been stolen. So it's important for us to know our history, to know something about our city and what role we played in our city. So if you're in Fort Worth, you ought to know who I.M. Terrell was. You ought to know who Dr. Marion Brooks was. If you're in Dallas, you ought to know R.A. Hester. You ought to know A. Maceo Smith. You ought to know Pearl C. Anderson. Because when you know who you are and from whence you come, nobody can really take that away from you. So it's no question that we need to know about the 52 people, the 52 African-American men who served during Reconstruction from 1870 to 1895. Those 52 men served in very uncertain times. The Ku Klux Klan was still around. Folks like us were still being lynched. As a matter of fact, they knew as they went into these positions in the legislature that at some point in time that might not last. And so I think that's a lesson for us today. There's always the risk, if we are not woke, as the kids say, that somebody will turn back the hands of time on us. It so happened that someone wrote an article in the Houston Telegraph at the time that African Americans were about to vote, and said that, in part, you are aware, this was a letter to colored voters, it said, you are aware that a very large majority of white people in Texas are opposed to allowing you to vote because they don't think you're qualified. And it went on to say, your right to vote will likely be taken away from you after a while, and you will be worse off than you are now. Charles W. Bryant responded to that, and he had an article in the paper that said, good advice, but we declined to accept it. He went on to say, if a free man can live in a free country without a voice in government, then you ought to take your own advice and try it for a while. The 52 men who served from 1870 to 1895 included William Holland, that you were talking about, and he represented Waller County, and he was the person who introduced the bill, as you just heard, that led to Texas A&M and Prairie View A&M, and probably only a handful of people in the legislature today know how this all came about. He authored a bill as well to set up a school for special needs children. It was not, the term that they used would not have been politically correct today, but he set up a school, the first school for special ed kids. They called it dumb, deaf, and orphan. Yes. And so that is how we got our first special needs school. Charles Gaines' legislation established the first public school system. The first public school system. Now, when he established that school system, and forgive my voice, I've got an allergy, he intended for it to be all the school children. And as you know, Representative Collier, these people get your legislation on the floor. They pass an amendment, as they did to his legislation, which omitted the integration clause. And then there was another legislator, Representative Roberts, who worked to develop Wiley College, even though that's a private institution. For almost 30 years, these legislators, participated in the legislature. Some of those people were brought here as slaves, and almost all of them were from other parts of the country. I think that less than 10% of the people were from Texas, maybe 3 or 4. They fought for the same basic needs that it seems we're fighting for now: education and voting rights. Like today, as black legislators, they suffered some defeats, but they enjoyed some victories, and they should never, ever be forgotten. It was therefore more than fitting that in 1995, 100 years after the close of Reconstruction, that Representative Garnet Coleman and Senator Rodney Ellis saw fit to pass a resolution paying high tribute to these outstanding Texans, resulting in the monument that is in the state cemetery. And that is so very important, because when I came to Austin in 1993 and walked those Capitol grounds, there was nothing on the Capitol grounds that depicted African Americans and their contributions to the state. There were all kinds of monuments to the Confederates, but nothing that spoke to African Americans and our involvement and our contributions in this state, which we know this state, like everywhere else, it was built on our backs. And so we were able to get this resolution passed, and everybody thought it was harmless, and it was, but it turned out, I think, to bring about much more of a positive effect than people thought it would at the time that we passed it. And I'll read just a couple of lines from that, but the background on some of these people was very, very interesting. Benjamin Franklin Williams, for instance, he was one of the founders for the Wesley Church in Austin. And he and his family actually went on to found one of the unincorporated cities that is near Houston. His great-great-great-grandson, I guess, is a member of the California Assembly today. And when we had the unveiling of the African American Museum on the grounds of the Capitol, his great-great-great-grandson came to that unveiling. And I also found out that he is a distant cousin to Sophronia Thompson. So when we look into these things, it's amazing what we find. But I'm delighted that this monument came to be in the cemetery there. And go by and see it if you have not. And I certainly am proud and pleased that we were able to find a way to erect a statue on the Capitol grounds that depicts the first black person to hit the soil in Texas, all the way up to astronauts and Barbara Jordan and Mickey Leland and folks like that. It could not, by statute, we could not have anybody that's living on the that African American Memorial Monument. I'm just curious, how many of you might have seen that monument? It is absolutely a must-see. Ed Dwight, a sculptor that I can't even tell you how talented he is. Kind of crazy, but he's very, very talented. And he did a superb job, so you ought to go and see that. But I don't want to get between you and the Cowboys and the Giants, or I guess it is. Representative Garnet Coleman passed this concurrent resolution along with Senator Rodney Ellis, and just a couple of whereases. Whereas the Capitol grounds are adorned by numerous shrines that pay homage to the people, ideals, and event that Texans hold dear. These displays are poignant reminders of the struggles that Texans have endured in the past and the challenges that we face today. And whereas, as Texas enters the 21st century, it is appropriate to offer a tribute to the African American political leaders who have helped to shape our past and will continue to mold our future. And whereas 100 years ago, the first era of such leadership closed with the departure from the stage of a select group of African American legislators serving from 1870 to 1895, they paved the way for their modern counterparts who sit today in the Texas House of Representatives and Senate. And it goes on. But thank you very much for allowing me to be with you on this important occasion as we honor these people who have made such a marvelous contribution to us as African Americans and to Texas and this country as a whole.
Please join me in giving Representative Giddings another round of applause. We now have a special presentation from State Representative Nicole Collier. Yes.
Good evening. I wanted to stand before you to have a presentation for someone I truly admire. If there's anyone that you can see in person that you're like, oh, I'm just so excited whenever they come around, it's this person, Representative Helen Giddings. I wanted to, I know we heard about a lot of her accomplishments. She's a business owner of Multiplex since 1989. She founded that business where she has a concession. She has a business that is in our concessions in our airports. So she not only is a political leader, but she's also a business leader throughout the whole state of Texas. And often in the Texas legislature on the House floor, she was referred as the gentle lady from Dallas. But if I had one word to describe her, it would be classy. A classy woman is not mean to other women, nor is a classy woman petty. A classy woman dresses tastefully, is well-read and intelligent. A classy woman only gives compliments when she sincerely believes it. A classy woman offers help and is considerate of others' time, just like she said, she's gonna let us go so we can see the Cowboys. A classy woman is a lady of her word. A classy woman is a woman of substance and inspires others. A classy woman seeks the truth and does not believe everything she hears. Lastly, a classy woman speaks faithfully, for she knows her roots are planted deeply with God. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Wilbert M. Curtis, on behalf of the Wilbert M. Curtis Texas Prince Hall Library Museum, I'd like to present to my mentor, Helen Giddings, this presentation as well.
I want to know that in you, they have a great representative and a great fighter. It takes most of us a minute or two to kind of settle in, but she's on that back mic asking these people these tough questions from day one.
Well, thank
so
you.
thank you
Yes.
so very, very much. All right.
I must too ditto that. I've had the privilege of watching many sessions of the legislature, and I must confess that even though we love our folks from Houston, this Dallas-Fort Worth contingent, they swing for the fences for Prairie View and Texas Southern. I know this personally, and they carry a lot of water for us, so thank y'all, each and every one of y'all, for that service. And I've watched y'all take a lot of stuff, but you stand strong, and you're very much admired by all of us, so thank you. We now have recognition of our special guest from Terrence H. James Sr., co-committee chairman of the Wilbert M. Curtis Prince Hall Library and Museum. Brother James?
Yes, sir. Give me just a moment. We have one more name to this.
Okay.
If y'all saw my list, y'all will understand.
I see we have Deputy Grand Master Michael T. Anderson that's here with us. I think I saw Big Bryce show up. Big! Big Bryce Hart.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending us with us this evening. I have the honor to acknowledge the guests that are in the house. Everyone here is special to us, so if your name is not called, that doesn't mean that we don't love you, we don't appreciate you showing up. We just have to acknowledge some people. First off, I would like to acknowledge the Honorable Wilbert M. Curtis, Grand Master, Most Worshipful Prince Hall, Grand Lodge of Texas. The Michael T. Anderson, Deputy Grand Master, Most Worshipful Prince Hall, Grand Lodge of Texas. Big Bryce Hardin, Grand Senior Warden, Most Worshipful Prince Hall, Grand Lodge of Texas. Our MC for the evening, Mr. Frank Jackson, Grand Senior Warden, the Grand Historian of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall, Grand Lodge of Texas. Tracy T.C. Biddle, the Grand Secretary, the Most Worshipful Prince Hall, Grand Lodge of Texas. Let's go with Willie Hyde Coleman Jr., the Grand Legal Advisor. He keep us straight. And he's also the chairman of the Prince Hall Charitable Foundation. We have Anthony J. Bennett, the District Deputy Grand Master of District 20, which is the home of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall, Grand Lodge of Texas. We have Jackie Livingston, the most ancient Grand Matron of the Heroines of Jericho. We have Charlotte Demas, the Grand Secretary of the Heroines of Jericho. We have Judge Clifford Davis. Hey. You celebrating your 95th birthday this year, is that correct? Hey, great job. Hey. Still looking good. Hey. All right. I have State Representative Nicole Coyer. Texas State Representative, District number 95.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right. We have Council Member Kelly Allen Gray. Fort Worth, Texas, District number 8. We have Council Member Gina Bivens. She had to leave. She was here earlier, but she had to leave. She's Fort Worth City Council, District number 5. Commissioner Devin Allen, Tarrant County Court Precinct number 2. We have Trustee Leah King, excuse me. Leah King, Turner Regional Water District. We have former state representative Glenn Lewis. We have former state representative Helen Giddings. We have state representative Carl Sherman. And for all the Cowboys fans, we have former Dallas Cowboy Timmy Newsom. Sarah Walker, the director of the Black Historical Genealogy Society. And now I would like to present some of the members of the Wilbert M. Curtis Texas Prince Hall Library Museum Committee. We have Mr. Benny Tucker. Where did he go? I told Benny if I get anything wrong, I'm going to blame it on him. That's why he left, I see. Yeah. We have Burrell Palmer. We have Mr. Billy Adams over here to my left. Myself, Terrence H. James Sr. We have Gail Hansen. And if you all need any information about what goes on in Texas, she's your woman. And in Tarrant County. We have Blake Moorman. Blake Moorman. With Fort Worth. City of Fort Worth. City of Fort Worth, all right. Thank you for coming, sir. We have Tarrant County Constable Michael Campbell. We have the Commish Radio Show host, Ed Gray. We was on this radio show this past weekend. It's a great show, so if y'all ever tune in, I'm sure y'all have a treat. Yeah. We have Tammy Pierce with PP. And we have, we are honored, we have a candidate who's running for Tarrant County District Court criminal judge. Lakeisha Smith. Yes. And if there is anyone else that I missed, again, let's blame it on Mr. Tucker. But you all had an opportunity now to stand up and be recognized. All right. Thank you.
Brother Tucker just came in the way back, then you made all this.
Yes. All right. So I have another honor right now to bring up our Grand Master of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Texas, Mr. Honorable Wilbert M. Curtis.
Trust in the Lord with all thy heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. Good evening, everyone. It's indeed a pleasure for me to be here this evening. And on behalf of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge, State of Texas, and its jurisdictions, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and viewing the 19th century Black Legislators Travel exhibit. I hope that it's been a benefit to you, and we want to especially thank our speaker for the evening, Representative Sister Helen Giddings, for those words of wisdom back. I'm one that very observant, and I got the hint that y'all want to get out of here so y'all can listen to watch the Dallas Cowboy football game tonight. So And all of the work has been done because everybody has been recognized that I was going to recognize. So I just want to say, again, thank you all for coming out. The question does come up that why is the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the state of Texas interested in recognizing the black legislators? First, the black legislators, educators, religious leaders, financial leaders, along with the common men and such as laborers, are those who organize the most Western Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the state of Texas. When you look down the list of those men, you will find Prince Hall Masons on those names. One being the example of Richard Allen, our second Grand Master of the state of Texas. Others that are not on the roll of Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Texas, but were required in organizing it because they were involved pre-Grand Lodge of Texas, like George T. Ruby. He never was a member of this Grand Lodge, but he was a member of our mother Grand Lodge in Kansas. And if you look in your history books, you'll see that he was the mentor for Norris Raccoon, our first Grand Master for the state of Texas. Another name that you're familiar with, especially in the Fort Worth area, he's not a legislator, but he had an active role in the growing of Texas, is William Gooseneck Bill McDonald here in Fort Worth. He was the secretary of this Grand Lodge for over 30 years. So if you go through and look at the history of Texas, you're going to see Prince Hall Masons all through that list. The main reason that it's important for us as Prince Hall Masons to look at the legislators of Texas is the main reason is we as Masons today, we need to go back to the basics and do what these legislators had wanted us to do, is basically when they set up this organization. So that is the reason why we as Masons today want to look at the Texas black legislators for the state of Texas. As I close, again, I just want to thank everyone for coming out. And as we stated, I really appreciate that you all are here, and we hope that it's going to benefit for you all. And it's my prayer that as you travel back home, that you find it as well or better as it did when you left it. And that I also hope and pray that the Dallas Cowboys win. Thank you.
We're going to have a closing prayer. We open with prayer and we're going to close with prayer. I think it's Benny and Michael. Definitely we want to close us out with a prayer. There's our Deputy Grand Master, Honorable Michael T. Anderson.
Good evening, everyone. We bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we come to you once again, first of all saying thank you for another day. A day that was not promised to us. And we just want to say thank you for your grace and your mercy, for your touch this morning where our eyes opened. We saw the glory and the beauty of what you have created. Now, Lord, we ask that you keep us on the road that you have put us on. Let our path be clear. And if there's any obstacles, that you remove them. Or that we stand still and let you do your work so that we can move forward. Because we've come a mighty long way, Lord. And we know that it's only been by your grace and your mercy that have brought us this far. And we just want to say thank you. We'll keep our hands in your hand, Lord, so that we can keep moving forward. Just thank you, Lord, for the many years that we've been here. And the many years that we can plan to continue to be here, fighting for not only being in the history books, but to help to build this nation to be what it truly should be. It says, in God we trust, and in God we do trust. All this we ask in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen.
you.